right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mikasa Johnson. I am the coordinator for the Illinois Reparations Commission, as well as the public affairs specialist for the Director's Office with Central Management Services. And in my role as the coordinator for ADCRC, as we use the acronyms for the Reparations Commission, my role is just to be the primary liaison between the commission as well as our stakeholders, helping with the management of the research process and ensuring that the commission is fulfilling all of the statutory requirements. That's the affiliated commission.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Hiram White. My pronouns are he, him. I am currently the African American Employment Plan Coordinator for Central Management Services. With that role, I bridge communications between the state of Illinois and African American Employment Plan Advisory Council. This includes supporting all of our agencies' HR, human resources, and supporting their recruitment, and also helping to go out in the community, especially the African American community, to gain and help that community gain access to state jobs.
So we're so appreciative of each of you guys online as well as in person joining us. We have, last time I checked, over 50 individuals online that are joining us. And to our members that are joining virtually, do not worry about your obscured view of the panelists. I will tilt it more shortly so you can get a better view. But Hiram and I will moderate the conversation, this very thought-provoking conversation on today that is going to explore the Black experience for Illinois state workers historically and pathways towards the future. And our panelists are members from our EPAC Council, which is the African American Employment Plan Council, as well as our Reparations Commission, ADCRC. So they will be giving some very progressive and challenging and expansive viewpoints on different perspectives.
Thank you. And again, we first thank you all for showing up in person and virtual to be a part of this. But before we get truly started, we want to introduce CMS Assistant Director, Mr. Andre Williams. In this role, Mr. Williams provides strategic input across the agency's portfolio with a specific focus on the Bureau of Strategic Sourcing and Fleet and Vehicle Services, along with our critical agency initiatives. Mr. Williams brings a wealth of unique experiences with over 20 years of state services focusing on finance, procurement, and fleet management. Let's all welcome Mr. Andre Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mikasa and Hiram. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming. I mean, these discussions are truly invaluable and definitely important to the state of Illinois, and definitely as far as African Americans are concerned. So I'm truly passionate about the work that both of these groups are doing, the EPAC and the ADCRC, and I'm definitely fortunate and blessed to be a part of it and be able to add input wherever I can and wherever it's necessary. So definitely want to thank a couple of people that are responsible for putting this thing together. There's a lot of hard work that goes into doing something like this. And again, we thank you for taking time out of your day to participate and join the occasion. First is our Patricia Santoya-Guerin, our Deputy Director of Diversity and Inclusion. She does an amazing job of reaching out to the community and doing things that can actually captivate and make people want to attend. We have an amazing team here at CMS, amazing team of staff that they're innovative thinkers and they come up with ideas and then we execute. That's the thing. Anyone can come up with an idea, There are plenty of thousands of ideas out there, but we actually, I can personally attest, CMS follows through, and we actually execute what we say we want to do. And a big part of that execution is, as far as putting things together, a big part of that is Kathy Kwiatkowski, who does an excellent job, an amazing job of helping people see their vision and making it come to fruition. So she does an amazing job behind the scenes of helping expound and bring out what the vision is, and to make it to where it turns out to where it works and we are actually able to achieve what we're looking for. So that's no small feat, but again, it just speaks to the drive, the passion, the initiative of CMS, which it all stems from our amazing director, Raven Devon. She does an amazing job of empowering everyone and encouraging us to go out and do things, to meet the community where they are, and to do things that are actually going to be impactful. Again, you can go through and you can say things, you can do things just for the sake of saying that you're doing it, but this team actually does things that we think will be impactful. Whether we hit the mark or not, it's not for lack of trying. So I've been with CMS since June of 2023. And I can't say how happy, how proud I am of the team that I'm working with, because I know what they're capable of, and I know what we're going to do in the future. So it's very refreshing to be able to come to work and to honestly say that we have a staff that's really passionate about improving our community. As Hiram stated, I've been a state employee for about 22 years, so this discussion is definitely near and dear and to my heart, because throughout the years, I can't remember attending an event like this where we're focusing on African American employment and the what it takes to actually get there and to remain, and just, it's nice to know that we have groups that are out there that are championing to make things better, because we all know we're moving in the right direction, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. So with the help of groups like this and events like this, I'm very hopeful and happy, and I think we're going to make some tremendous strides. So again, I want to thank you all. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation, one that's definitely needed and definitely beneficial to a lot of people. So for those of you here and those of you attending online, we thank you. We hope you are able to gather some things, and I just encourage more of this, and I think it will happen. This is not going to be a one-stop shop, a one-and-done thing. We're going to continue to do things. We're going to continue to do things that the community can benefit from. And if you guys have ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, because the community is what we want, so the community is who we're going to listen to and cater to. So again, thank you all for being here, and let's enjoy the event.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, once more again. And so as we get started, the first thing I want to do is again thank the council and the commissions for joining us. They are all busy and professionals and have other things going on, so we don't take it for granted for them coming out today. So let us give them a round of applause. And as we get started, council members and commissioners, could you each please state your name, preferred pronouns, your current profession, and title within the council or commission you currently serve? Thank you.
Good morning. Councilmember William Birch. Pronouns are he and him. Been on the council since the inception in 2011.
Good afternoon. Councilman Carolyn Day. I have been a part of the African American Employment Policy Council since 2022. My pronouns are her and she. I am the executive director of the Black United Fund of Illinois, affectionately known as BUFFY, and it is a federation of affiliates founded on payroll deductions. So many of you might know us through the SECA program, and I'm looking to continue the work with this council.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Williams III. I am the chairman of the Social Science Department at Kennedy King College. I go to City College in Chicago for 20 years. I am also a commissioner for the Reparations Commission for the state of Illinois, which I'm very excited about being part of. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jackie Algie, and I am a commissioner as well for the Reparations Commission. I'm also the Vice President and Director of External Relations for Service Employees International Union, and I'm very delighted to be here today.
Thank you all.
All right. Councilmember Birch. According to the 2022 African American Employment Plan report, one of the goals for fiscal year 23 was for the council members to identify, promote, recommend, and connect all state agencies to events and community organizations where state agencies can promote employment opportunities. Please share some of the collaborations and events with state agencies and the overall success of these partnerships, and just a little bit more insight as to what some of the mission and incentives of the African American Employment Plan Council is.
Awesome. Some of the initiatives that come out of the council is to, some of the initiatives that come out of the council is to work with the various departments and state government to identify obstacles that they may run into with identifying African Americans for employment within their department. But not just employment, but the law and the council focuses on supervisory, managerial, and technical positions. So those are leadership positions where decisions are made. So some of the things that we've identified to help them, these agencies identify qualified African Americans stem from partnering with the local fraternities and sororities, partnering with community-based organizations, and identifying from the representatives from the various departments what particular things we can identify, like the relocation assistance that the state offers to get the qualified individuals for the positions.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And joining us virtually, we have the chair of the Illinois State Reparation, Chair Marvin Slaughter. If you could just give us your title, your role with the commission, and then the question I have for you as well, Commissioner Slaughter, is part of the mission for ADCRC is to ensure equity, equality, and parity for Black American descendants of slavery, including preservation of African American neighborhoods, developing vocational training centers, and ensuring representation in state contracts. Please tell us a bit about some of the initiatives the Commission are currently working on and to plan on implementing to enforce the mission.
Thank you, Mikasa. As Mikasa said, my name is Marvin Slaughter, and I am the chairman of the Illinois African Descent Citizens Reparations Commission. And like you also said, the commission is responsible for developing and implementing measures to ensure equity, equality, and parity for Black American descendants of slavery. We're planning on doing that through the preservation of African American neighborhoods, through investment in business development, home ownership, and affordable housing at the median income of each neighborhood, with a full range of housing services and strengthening of institutions, which will include, without limitation, schools, parks, and community centers. Looking to build and develop a vocational training center for people of African descent, citizens with satellite centers throughout the state to address the historical racial disparity in building trades, and the de-skilling of African American labor through historic discrimination in building trade unions. And also looking at ensuring proportional economic representation in all state contracts, including reviews and updates of the state procurement and contracting requirements and procedures, with the express goal of increasing the number of African American vendors and contracts for services to an equitable level, reflecting their population in the state. These are just a few different ways that we're intending on following through on our statutory requirements, and we're open to engaging with the community to determine more.
Thank you for that, Chair Slaughter. We appreciate your time. Chair Slaughter couldn't be here in person because he is also doing speaking engagements out of town today. So he is going to drop off for the remainder of this discussion. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is for Commissioner Williams and Councilmember Day. My question is, what are some of the key challenges you have faced serving on the council or commission, and how do you plan to address them in 2024? Again, what are some of the key challenges your council or commission have already faced, and what is your plans to address them in 2024?
Thank you for the question. So I think as we begin this work, when you talk about challenges that exist in the work that we're doing, I want to share that we really have an education problem. I work every day in the city colleges of Chicago, working with young people and older people as well, to understand the conditions and the context of the communities in which we find ourselves. And so what I have found more than anything in my work, not only with the commission, but outside the commission, is people just don't recognize how significant these challenges are. Let me share with you a few data points that may help us to get some context. So a study in 2022 said that Illinois ranked number 50 out of 50 states in terms of inequality between Black and white residents. Number 50. The only place that was worse was the District of Columbia. But in terms of states in the nation, we rank number 50. And how is this quantified? It was quantified by unemployment inequality, income, poverty, homelessness, educational inequality. Let me read to you a few data points that were used to get us to this number. We ranked 45th in median annual income, 48th in labor force participation, 50th in unemployment, 33rd in home ownership, 40th in poverty, 48th in homelessness, 49th in our share of unsheltered homeless, and 42nd in our share of executives, looking at the gap between those of African descent and those of European descent. Now, we know that nationally we have a major problem around this issue as well. African Americans have 1/10 the wealth of European Americans in this nation. 70% of European Americans, which is the term I actually prefer to use, other than Black and white, which I can explain a little bit later, but people of European descent, 70% are homeowners, only 40% of people from our community are homeowners. And so as we do this work, in communities that I find myself, the reparations leaders and people who are interested in this stuff, and people in academia and activists are thinking about this all the time. But the general public may not be. And so our major challenge is to get people to recognize and understand that these conditions do not come about by themselves, and they will not be fixed by themselves. We have to be very intentional. We have to be very specific and directed, and we have to play the long game. We tend to have a short attention span when it comes to political issues, and we oftentimes look and say, well, that was only 50 years ago, or that was 100 years ago, or that was 200 years ago. And the reality is that we are still dealing with the decisions that people made 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that still have created disproportionate inequality and poverty in our communities. And so that is the work that we do. It is arduous work at times, but it's rewarding at times as well. And I'm excited to be a part of it. We are the second state in the nation. For those of you who do not know, California was the first state in the nation to have a statewide reparations commission. We are the second. New York is third now. And what an honor to be a part of this work in a state that understands that the issue of equality is at the top of what it is that we ought to be doing in politics and in society. Dr. King said very famously that we cannot have a first-class nation with second-class citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you, you very much for that. I definitely want to acknowledge the work that your team is doing. We know that Robin Rue led the charge here in Evanston for that. And we want to also acknowledge Cam Howard under Reparations United. So what's happening here in the state of Illinois is definitely needed and well appreciated in the work that you're doing. My challenge in being a part of the African American Employment Policy Council was that I looked at folks that made applications and the lengthiness of the process to have responses to those applications, or if all, those numbers were just not good. We saw lots of entry level folks, but we were not seeing any succession in executive level or administrative level, be it that it's not advertised or be it word of mouth. And so I'm challenged to make sure that we offer professional development amongst interdepartments so that interagencies can know what's going on, and to also move along outside of Chicago jurisdiction area. There's lots of opportunities beyond the Chicago proper that we're not being made aware of. So I constantly challenge when the statistics and the data comes back to make sure that I can physically see what has been given to me in terms of data.
Again, thank you both. Thank you both for giving us your feedback on the challenges. And I know that, you know, to be a volunteer to be on this council and commission, I can't thank you enough for being intentional about the work that you do. And so my next question will go to Councilmember Burke. The African American Employment Plan was designed to provide increased access to state employment for African Americans and help to build a governmental workforce that reflects the diversity of our great state. In your opinion, how would you measure the council's current success with that?
So, excuse me, in my opinion, since the inception of the council, I would measure the success by the evaluation that we did on the departments within state government and the underutilization of African Americans in some of those positions that are in managerial, supervisory, or technical, or if you will, leadership positions. And the way that we've been able to engage the agency representatives to identify, again, the obstacles that they run into to identify qualified candidates, and helping them identify those candidates, giving them pathways to find those candidates, and actually working with the community to find those candidates. I think that the success has been great over the years. There are areas of improvement that can be made. There are departments that we still have not really touched as far as the underutilization of African Americans, but there's promise in the future.
Thank you for that. Is anybody else on the panel would like to chime in on that?
Well, I'd like to add that in addition to having stellar members on the council, we have several members who have worked over 30 years for the state and since then retired. So we do have seasoned expertise, people who have had their experiences from day one, very candid experiences, which kind of guides our intentional interest in this area.
Good.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And again, with the EPAC, our goal is to help maintain a desirable work environment that is equitable for all employees to drive recruitment, promotion, and retention. And so with that said, Councilmember Day, my question for you is, what resources, tools, and opportunities are available to African Americans after they are employed by the state? how can they benefit before just coming and leaving? How can they gain retention or promotion within the state of Illinois workforce?
Thank you for that question. I think one, preparing yourself too when you're making application, when you're actually looking at the job description, but assuming that many of the folks have been working here for many years, they want higher level opportunities. And so there's a number of internal professional development courses that are available as a state employee and not necessarily just in your agency. So I think when we start participating in those opportunities interagency, then you become a little bit more aware. But also during COVID, there was a lot of time that we had that there was no reason anyone could just keep their minds busy and their expertise busy by taking a lot of professional development courses via webinars. So I think one, you want to, as we say, study to show yourself approved, but we also want that opportunity at the door to be there.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I think, well, I mean, I would just say this as a general point around diversity as a whole. It's interesting that that DEI is under attack in our nation, right? The idea that we ought to have workplaces and spaces that look like the country. The fact that we have to argue about that and we have to defend that, it really doesn't make any sense to me. And what I recognize, and I hope, and I done some diversity training and things like that, I tell people all the time, then allow your workplace and your company not to be diverse. If you think that we should not have diversity or we should not be pushing, allow your space to not be diverse, and you will see the competitive disadvantage that you have. You will see how diversity provides perspective. It provides a level of feedback around what it is that we are doing. Companies that are excelling the most in particularly corporate America, but across, obviously, look at states as well, those places and spaces are environments where they recognize the power of having multiple viewpoints in the room. And so, it just, as I think about this, I really hope, and I know that in this room we're preaching to the choir, right? Like everybody's here because you guys care about these issues. You wouldn't take the time out of your day if you didn't care about these issues. But my heart and my work is to educate and convert the unconverted, right? Those who are looking at these things and go, do we really need reparations? Do we really need diversity? And I'm telling you that if you look at our nation, the diversity of this experiment that we call America, it is a unique and beautiful thing. But diversity will either become our greatest strength in this country, or it will tear this country apart. And I think that the work that's being done at the state level, I work for city colleges, this work is so critical and it is so crucial. And we ought to be, and I think we are in many ways, we are kind of a light for the rest of the country. We are a model for the rest of the country in this, and we've got to continue to push that. And honestly, I don't want to say pat ourselves on the back, but we ought to be proud to be in this state. Because I can tell you from personal experiences, from relationships with people, whatever, there are a lot of places you do not want to be in this country around these issues of diversity. I can name a whole list of them real quickly, but I won't. And so I am excited about the work that's being done around this issue. Happy to be a part of it, and we have to continue to celebrate what we have here in the state.
He's got a question.
Thank you.
Thank you all for that. This question is for Commissioner Williams. When we think of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, what does that look like in terms of reparations? You kind of already started to allude to this. When the needs are so varied amongst the group itself, it's so diverse. For example, there are some people in the community who are homeowners, have completed higher education. They're not business owners, nor are they seeking state contracts. So how do we develop something that's truly equitable for everyone?
So we have to have the patience and the fortitude to develop specific remedies for specific problems. I think sometimes there is a laziness in conversations around equity. We sweep through and we look at the issues facing one community and we say, well, we'll sweep through and we'll offer equity and equality for all communities and it'll look the same. It does not look the same. What has happened to African Americans, not only in this country, but across the state, requires years and years of research, study, and specific understanding so that we can come to specific remedies. So our work right now is really in 3 areas. Number one, we are working on and have commissioned a study, if you will, around what inequity looks like. What are the specific racial injustices that have happened in this state for the past 150 years? Number two, we are engaged in a public education campaign. We were just talking at last week's meeting, which comes first, right? The chicken or the egg? Do we educate or do we study? What do we do? And we're kind of going through this, and we're leaning towards this need to study because we need to go and then present this information and make this case, but it will help us to understand what it is we have to do. Last but not least, our work will then be used as recommendation for legislation, which I think is critical. And so I want to give you just one example, and to your point, there are some folks who have suffered injustice in home ownership, and some folks who've suffered injustice in education, and some who've suffered injustice, you name it, in all the myriad ways that we can. But I want to give you one that I think is so critical, and it's probably my favorite topic in this space. It's housing. If you think about the really 60 years, if you will, of government policies that across the nation created the disparities that we see in these communities, we have never fixed this in this country. We have never fixed this. I was having a conversation with a 90-year-old friend of my grandmother's who was a full-grown adult with children when the federal protections for voting were passed. Oftentimes we think this is ancient history, and it is not. And so in the city of Chicago, during the 50s and the 60s, we know about contract buying, right? And we understand that there were a number of African American residents who purchased houses that they could not actually own until they fully paid off their debt, and then they would get the deed to that house. And it is estimated, recent studies show that $3 to $4 billion worth of wealth, $3 to $4 billion worth of wealth was lost on the south and west side as a result. People want to have arguments about reparations and have conversations about, well, who should get this and how much should they get, and should they get a check, and should it be this person? I am telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that if we begin, which is the work that we're doing, to look at specific injustices like this, we don't have time for these arguments. There are so many people who are still alive. There are so many communities that are still suffering, that our work, our very targeted work, rectifying these very recent historic inequities and injustices is enough for a lifetime of reparations work. And so for me, I recognize it is housing, it is education, it's all of the above. There's so much work to be done. But I think that to your point and to your question, we have to take the time to really study, because when we do, and we come out, I believe that our arguments are airtight. Our cause is it's undeniable, and I think that it's an exciting time to be alive, because it is time to see justice served for people who have been treated so unfairly for many years.
Thank you, Hiram. He's doing such a wonderful job. Tossing the mic. Would any of the other panelists like to add their thoughts on that? Okay. So this question is for Commissioner Algie. Providing employment opportunities, specifically to the targeted Black individuals, can serve as a form of economic redress, helping to address past injustices and pave a way for financial empowerment. Although providing employment alone cannot fully tackle the complex and deeply rooted issues of racial inequality, how can Illinois continue to contribute towards
dismantling structural inequalities to promote greater equity in the workforce.
Thank you. Thank you. So I am going to approach this or answer it from a different perspective. As I stated in my announcement of who I was, who I work for, I work for a union that represents over 90,000 workers. And majority of those workers do work in the care industries, if you would. Childcare, healthcare, home care, and nursing homes. Now, during the pandemic, it became this word essential became the buzzword. Everybody was talking about the workers are essential. We need workers to do this and that and the other, right? But I would argue that these workers were essential all the time. They didn't just become essential. Thank you. And so if we look at what we do as a union in this context, we don't bargain with the state. Our members don't work for the state directly, but what they do is work for agencies who have contracts with the state. And so we work to help negotiate the contracts and hopefully win them. Part of that is driven, a good part of that is driven by who we represent. So I said the industries we represent, but majority of the people that work in those industries look like me. They're Black women, women of other ethnicity, and predominantly female. But yet they provide these services every single day. Why shouldn't they be able to go to work and come home with a good paycheck? Why should they have to work 2 and 3 jobs to be able to take care of them and their families? Why should they have to, as Commissioner Williams talked about, in terms of housing, my family went through that. We were part of that whole tearing down 53rd and Wentworth and building the Dan Ryan, right? Contract purchasing. My grandmother couldn't buy a home because she was a single woman. I mean, we still have those kinds, not necessarily that, but we still have the issues of fair housing that exist, not only in our state, but around the country. And so how do we change that? When we talk about reparations, what does that mean to us? What does that really mean? I mean, I heard someone say the other day that President Lincoln was the finest president in the history of our country because he introduced reparations. And guess what that was? 40 acres and a mule. Now, what would 40 acres and a mule look like today? Anybody you got any answers for me? I want to hear you.
The wealth gap wouldn't exist.
That's right. Okay, I like that.
No, it's been proven.
No.
The wealth gap between European Americans, I'll use that term.
Okay.
American Black Southerners like myself and my family, that delta is $165,000. That's roughly what it would have worked out to. Had we gotten our 40 acres and a mule, us American Southern Black descendants would have had an annual family income of about $168,000.
That's right.
The wealth gap would not exist.
That's right. We'd have some generational wealth to share and to pass on, right? Yes, ma'am.
That was my answer. We have generational wealth.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's part of what this whole Reparations Commission is about. We are looking for fair and equitable ways to make sure that Blacks in particular, but people of color, are given the opportunity to get what they deserve, right? I could go on and on.
Thank you.
May I say something about
Sure, go ahead.
And I appreciate what Commissioner Algie said, but we have to understand the totality of this issue because she mentioned the history there. And we were having this debate after our meeting on Friday. You do realize that it is a shame that Evanston had to be the first municipality in the country to do reparations. And then you have Asheville, North Carolina that did their own reparations plan. And then the state of California has to do it. And then the state of Illinois, and then the state of New York, when reparations is a federal issue. 40 acres and a mule is a federal issue. And until we recognize that, we're never going to get to full equality. So we do this work because, as they say, you know, the states are the laboratory of democracy and all that kind of stuff. So we have to do healthcare at the state level, and we got to do all this stuff at the state level to convince the federal government. But never get it twisted. The ultimate goal is the fulfillment of the policies that President Lincoln put forward that never came to fruition. We will continue this work at the state and local level, but ultimately, unless we get there as a nation, we'll never be what we need to be and what we could be as a country.
One more thing. Oh, we're gonna get it started. One of the other things about this commission in particular that I'm proud to serve on is what we decided and agreed upon at the beginning, is that we would be the model for the rest of the country, and I believe that we will.
You could keep the mic down there. I'll project my voice because Commissioner Williams is next. This is our final question prior to us opening up to Q&A from the audience as well as those who are joining us online. So, Commissioner Williams, the Illinois Slavery Era Disclosure Bill was a piece of legislation passed in 2019 with aims at promoting awareness and education about the state's historical involvement in slavery. Another part of the mission for the Reparations Commission deals with the creation and enforcement of Illinois Slavery Era Disclosure Bill. We have seen states like California begin to dive into this issue as well. Can you explain what this means for Illinoisans, African American descendants of slavery, as we begin to dive into it similarly?
Sorry, if I may, I just had one comment before we move on. I wanted to say, when we look at the barriers sometimes in making higher level opportunities, many of us are concerned about not being in the union and being protected. So I don't want us to let those barriers stop us from making those applications to be a decision maker, to be at the table, to be on the menu. So please don't let those barriers deter you.
So I think that these conversations oftentimes get stalled or opposed by those who are disinterested in this issue, but making generalizations and using scare tactics around the idea that we're going to open up the state treasury or the federal treasury to start handing out cash to every person of color in the country, and we won't be able to afford it, which we can't afford it, by the way. You know, we just sent I think it was $60 billion to Ukraine. Well, actually, yeah, we just passed the bill to send $60 billion to Ukraine. So I think we can afford what we want to afford, but that's a whole other conversation. But the reality is that what our work is research, education, policy, prescriptions. That's what we're doing. Research, education, policy, prescriptions. How can anyone be opposed to that? And because I've said so much about this, I won't say anymore, but I think it is critical that we recognize what we're doing, what reparations in the state is, and what it's not.
Thank you.
Again, thank you all for your work and what you do to help educate us to continue to work and challenge the state of Illinois. Again, I thank our director for being here and giving us a chance. CMS is a great place because we are pushing the envelope. I've been in state government 25 plus years, and sometimes we do things as a checkbox. But since I've been here, we check the box and we move on. And I'm happy to have that. So that's all to you, Dr. Devine. Let's get right. At this time, the floor is open for you to challenge and poke at the panel. So if anyone has a question.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Beatrice Boyce. I'm the Vice President of the City of Chicago and the Conrad Rural Community Reparations Commission. And it was a lot of the work that we did that actually pushed the legislation or the commission to come forth on the state level when partnering with Senator Maggie Hunter and Will Davis and also Dr. Willie Wilson. And so kudos to all those that worked on that to get to this point.
Yes.
My question and comment for you, Theodore Williams, is, it spooks me when I hear we need to study and we need to educate, right? The Koreans in the Holocaust victims were not educated on the harm that was done and the crime that was committed amongst their ancestors or the descendants, of the trauma that they received. And so when it comes to Blacks, it's always educate, and it's always we have, to study. There's been enough studying done. There's enough history that is in place for the state to pull down to get any statistical data that they need to move forward with writing the plan, writing the legislation, right? And so when you say study, and I would like to know, what is your mental time frame in the study? Because I feel like it's the time to call for action right now. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'll be clear, I did not create the legislation. I am following the mandate from the state. Had the mandate said, let's move, guess what I'd be doing right now? I'd be moving. And so the way that this was crafted prior to me getting to the table was that we need to do an exhaustive and very thorough look at the specific racial injustices that have occurred in the state since the slavery era. And I am grateful to do that because, with all due respect to the wonderful people who have done phenomenal work here, the vast majority of the public is not as well versed in this particular issue as someone as educated as yourself or the other people who are in the room. And what I do understand about politics, although I've never served in public office, I have run and I've been teaching it for 20 years, is that part of our work is a public education campaign to win the hearts and the minds of the people who we need to convince to get legislation passed. That is the way that the system works in democracy. I am fully on board. I am fully convinced. Many of you are fully convinced. But we have work to do. And while I do agree with you fully that, in some ways, I mean, my God, could it not be more obvious? As an educator every day, I oftentimes have to wrestle with those questions myself when I walk into a classroom and I go, can't you all see what is happening? And the reality is that, unfortunately, many people cannot. And so we make an airtight case. We push forward what we have to do. And the timetable that you asked about, once again, I am not in control of that timetable. If they were to tell me that our mandate was that we had to release a report within 2 weeks, guess what? I'd be on the board to do that. The California Commission, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I think their process was about a 2-year process. And so that was the time frame for them. That was about the model for them. And I think that we are trying to stick to a similar timetable.
Thank you. Let us take a question from the chat as well.
All right, Commissioner Williams, this one is directed to you. Someone in the chat wanted to know, what is the state government that's ranked #1 in hiring African Americans, if you have that data? Do you have that?
I actually don't have that data on me.
Okay.
I'll get back to them on that.
All right, so we do not.
But I will say this about that. Let me, if you can hear me. It's an issue of inequality. So the ranking is an issue of inequality. Like, if you think about Illinois, we have some of the best schools in the entire country, and we have some of the worst. We have some of the wealthiest people in the entire country, and we have some of the poorest. And so when we look at our state, it's an issue of the gap that we're looking at. And I can get back to you about the numbers for the #1, unless Director Devons, but she may have it.
Well, I'm only worried about Illinois. So
Okay.
thank you for the kind words. I don't deserve them. That's what the team is for. Illinois has, we have 22% of our workforce is Black or African American. That's a number I'm really proud of, because that's in parity with how we're represented throughout the state. But it's no question the vast majority of us are north of 80, but all the work the state does is all throughout the state. And so when we look at what that percentage looks like, that means we're doing something right. Could it be better? Could it be better across the board? Yes. We have the most work to make in the Latino community, where we are not represented anywhere near what they represent in the state in terms of the state's workforce. But then I want to say to state employees, it is an incumbent upon us as state employees to bring folks along. You can't be what you don't see.
Mhm.
And so what I know when I came, there's a Latino gentleman, his name is Charlie. That man has spent his entire career recruiting people of color to the state. That has been his life's work. I don't know what he actually did for 30 years, but we have to replicate that, because that is what he has done. And we have seen almost change the face and continue to change. And then I said, well, hold on. If he's doing this, and he's doing it for all of us, black and brown, but we have to step up and do it for ourselves. And so something that Hiram, the reason why he's amazing, he's a vet, and he's got to take along some folks and say, this is how I did it. I actually send folks who are interested in working for the state directly to him. He can tell you, he gets lots of emails saying, I got this resume. So he can help them navigate. It is complex. I'm not gonna act like it's very easy. But if we don't extol the opportunities in terms of how to get in and how to stay in, and to move around, even though I don't like that as my day job, I don't like when y'all move. But if that's what's best for you, I'd rather you be employed in some agency than no agency. But other folks have had decades in terms of understanding how to play this game, and we haven't. We get in and we just be like, okay, we in. No, we get in. If I come through, we all gotta come through.
That's right.
Now. Thank you.
That's right.
Before we go back in person, question is, are there incentives to increase recruitment and retention of African Americans in agencies and positions such as revenue auditor trainees for the Illinois Department of Revenue, where the recent recruitment has been very low? Is there recruitment at community colleges statewide, predominantly Black institutions like Chicago State University and other colleges and universities that have high representation of African Americans? And how are we getting these postings out to Black communities? Anybody want to take on all of that?
I got somebody that can answer that.
Thank you, Hiram, and good afternoon.
And Patricia, if you need me to restate anything, let me know.
Sure.
Quite a bit.
Please correct me if I miss any points on there, and pardon me for giving my back here to anyone behind me. But so certainly, we have through the Employment Plan Advisory Council, that is one of our efforts. So we conduct we begin with a little bit of that data, and so we conduct annual surveys for all state agencies that are under the governor's portfolio. So that is we have an average of about 50 agencies every year, and some great colleagues here and advocates as well, who partner with us to complete that survey. That survey is then consulted with our internal data team. And from there, we are also meeting with the council on a quarterly basis where we invite these agencies and say, let's talk about your numbers. What are your efforts there? Not only that, but then through the annual report that we produce to the General Assembly on February 1st of every year, our team develops identifies common denominators and opportunities for us to work on. And so we develop annual goals that are enterprise-wide. And to make sure that our partners and our different agencies are able to meet those goals, we go on to internally build the infrastructure for that. So one of the examples of that is we identify community partners. So for example, some of our community partners are here, but others are addressing the demographics of our diverse state. So we're building relationships throughout the state. More specifically, to answer the question about higher education, we do have a very strong relationship with Chicago State University and also the City Colleges of Chicago. We just signed an agreement, if you will, with the Chancellor of City Colleges of Chicago to make sure that we built an equity-based internship program where we're not expecting the students to learn to self-navigate, go through a governor's office application. We go to the community college for their TRIO program, et cetera, maybe brother to brother, and we ask those advisors, here's a position from the Department of Aging, for example. You select the student for this. And this is an opportunity that's paid at parity with those opportunities that are also in the governor's office. We also applied to serve as an externship position with HBCUs. We are very excited that we have that pipeline now as well. So just to give some examples, and thanks to Hiram for helping to lead some of these initiatives.
I want to respond to that. Picasso, can I respond to that? Thank you. I appreciate you giving us that information. Only thing I'd like to add is that whether it be in the fields that you mentioned or in the healthcare fields that we represent, training and education are key for recruitment and retention. And so I just like for us not to forget that people need to be trained and educated in order to apply for jobs and to hold them or maintain them.
Thank you, and time is running near, so we have room for one more in-person question that they want to ask.
I'm Sarah Whitty. I'm from the Illinois State Board of Education. My question is, we have a lot of wonderful resources. Are there any resources or educational resources that you recommend for helping convince people that DEI is important and positive?
Delicious.
I can just speak out. We'd be glad to share with you a template that was actually created by our own Department of Human Rights, and then implemented by the Governor's Office, which is now a requirement for all state agencies and all state employees to complete. So we'd be glad to share that information, that template with you. Okay. All right, sorry.
So it's about 1 o'clock. We had about 75 individuals join us online. So for the questions that we did not get to, we'll just have to keep this conversation going. We greatly appreciate the participation, the engagement. Thank you guys for coming out. And since we still have our director in the room, do you want to give us any closing remarks before we part?
This is a beginning, not an end.
Thank you.
It will take us all to hold each other accountable, to remain engaged and active. You can talk all you want, but if you ain't doing it, the work doesn't get done.
That's right. Yeah, we gotta get some of these public events. We don't want